an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Fullmetal Alchemist, Brotherhood. Episode 46, Looming Shadows. Ooh. In this episode, Al keeps having these weird connections with his body in the void, and it seems to be distracting him enough that he has let down his guard and gotten captured. And I'm really feeling for this kid, man. He has been put through it. He needs a break. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Max for commissioning this episode. Okay, so first things first, I just want to say, and I'm not even sure I'm going to ask, but I'm asking even though I know. You'll see. Ed's taller, right? That's not just my imagination. He stands in front of Winry this episode, and he's taller than her. That has never been true, has it? His whole look is different. He looks like he grew up about 3 years since the last time we saw him. And I can't tell, I'm pretty certain he has never been taller than her. So that, objectively, I am pretty confident I can say, is a change. But as far as the rest of him looking older, that feels a lot more sort of subjective, and I can't decide if it's true or not. And I thought about comparing directly stills from this episode to stills of the other episodes. I don't want to do that, I feel like that's not the way that people would normally watch a show a lot of the time. I say that, but these days, it is a little bit more. But yeah, he just seems a lot older, and it feels kind of sudden. And I don't know if it's because we haven't seen him standing next to Winry all that recently, and all of a sudden the change just feels a lot more dramatic because in comparison with her, it's more apparent. Or if it's supposed to be that it happened kind of quickly, But yeah, I wanted to ask that because I don't know if that has anything to do. There was this theory that they had that he had his growth stunted because the connection between him and Al's body was sort of fueling Al's body staying alive. So basically, Ed was losing some of his nutrients and I'm assuming the hormones and stuff that happen as you grow to sustain Al's body. And if he's growing now, I feel like that's not a good sign actually, because Al's been having this encounter with the void and his body in the void. And I feel like if Ed's growing, that means that body isn't getting the same power source, nutrient, whatever, as it was. And that feels like that just means it's either going to die or it's shutting down or something. And I don't know, maybe it's a good sign. Maybe I'm misinterpreting this. But I wanted to put it out there because it was something that I kept stopping and noticing in the scenes with him and her together. So let's start this episode off. First, we are with Miles, and he is setting things up with some of his guys. There's a whole plan that they've got in place. And Miles is one of those characters where I really enjoy him because of the role that he is playing and everything, and he feels like a really smart character. And yet there is something about him that I don't like, and I can't really put my finger on what it is. I feel like maybe it's just the coldness of him. He's just very, very willing to kill, as we have seen, and maybe that's sort of influencing things. But yeah, they're back in Ed and Al's like hometown, and there is a spring sheep festival that is happening, and they are coming in to get some more water, and they're bringing these big tanks that allegedly are going to be filled with water and then piled back onto the train. And one of the crates gets carried a lot farther than the others, and it turns out that crate has Winry in it. Hey! They do a lot of hiding people in large metal objects in this show. A word about the Sheep Festival. I'm really, I just want to know about it. I know this doesn't matter. I am absolutely down for a sheep festival. If anybody knows of one, and it's not too far, I was super into the Durham Fair when I lived in Connecticut, which is sort of like agricultural fair, a lot of animal husbandry prizes and things like that. And in Texas, there are some big fairs, but they're very commercial. They're much more like carnivals. And I really miss the farming aspects of those kinds of fall harvest fairs. And there was this article today. You guys, how many of you, show of hands, have seen 10th Kingdom? Because it's not good, but it is also one of those things that I have seen probably 10 times at this point, which is saying something because it's long. And there was an article on NPR, and it says, I went and looked it up just now, a country fair in Southwest Virginia, one woman won first, second, and third place for best cookies. And then she won best canned tomatoes, best canned corn, best pickled peppers, best sauerkraut, best relish, best spaghetti sauce, best jelly, and best jam. I want to know her really bad. That is wild. Either she was fucking a judge or she's outstanding. And I really hope it's that second one, because I want to know. I don't pickle things. I don't jar things. I don't really I have never canned, but I would. I would can for her on one of her recipes. Just hook me up. Anyway, we don't get a lot of details about the sheep festival, guys, but I have to assume that we're going to have sheep shearing competitions. We're going to have sheep shows where you have your old sheep trot through, maybe do a little bit of maybe you could have a sheep dog doing some, because they have those corralling sort of contests where your sheepdog has to chase the thing. And this is all 10th Kingdom again, guys. And sheep milk products, sheep cheese, sheep custards, I don't know. And I guess you could serve meat as well. I feel like some people might have an issue with that, but honestly, it's fine. So anyway, what I'm saying is I created an entire event in my head, and this show is not concerned about the sheep festival, at least not yet. But I really was. So they bring her up to the house and knock, and nobody answers. And Winry lets herself in and immediately goes inside up to her room and starts to change. And she's lifting up her undershirt, and we get a little underboob flash here. And all of a sudden, she has this moment, and she stops and looks, and Ed is sitting right there, eating a sandwich with his mouth hanging open and sweat pouring down his face. I don't know why his expression got me laughing so much. I think it's because I would have expected perhaps an expression of lust, leering, something. And instead, they make him look like he's genuinely at a loss. He just doesn't know what to say or how to react. He should say something, God knows, but he doesn't. He just sits there. So she screams, and the dudes who've brought her here come running up with their guns drawn. And then when they come running up with their guns drawn, Ed's guys come up behind them with their guns drawn. And then this like mechanical dog, he's like a dog with an automail leg, comes running up. Have we met this dog before? I can't remember this dog. And, you know, that's not saying much because my brain has just been kind of broken lately. But he bites Darius, I think his name is. And then all of a sudden, here is Ling pulling the dog off by the collar, and everybody is just like, who are you? Well, who are you? And it's honestly pretty funny. And I love this dog still trying to like take a bite out of greed, and he's holding it by the collar, looking just kind of like, brother. So Winry says, what are you guys all doing here? And Ed says, it's a cautionary tale about guns. And she says, don't be a smartass. Tell me why you're in my room. And he says, I wanted someplace private to eat my sandwich. Why? I don't know why that cracked me up so bad, but this whole thing, this is very funny. And eventually, Winry just snaps and kicks absolutely everybody out of the room. And we see her like beating them all with a wrench. And Ed is allowed to stay, but that does not mean that he isn't subject to the wrench at one point. So she tells him about Al, and she's like, he's at the train station right now with Miles. The train is going to leave soon. And Ed starts to get up and head straight out. And then he stops, and she's like, what's the matter? Don't you want to go and see him? And when he turns around, this is when I noticed that he looks completely different. Like, the way he's drawn, the collar of his shirt is wider so you can see like the muscles of his neck and collarbone. And it's like, I don't know, it gives him a much more like jacked sort of look. And then when he is standing across from her, he is taller and his hair even looks slightly different. It's not even like it's longer. I can't put my finger on it. It just looks less like kiddish, you know? So anyway, we then go to Al, who is hiding in one of the train cars and watching the sheep festival getting set up. And Miles comes and lets him know, we're going to be heading out in a minute. I hope the next time that you set eyes on your hometown, it'll be in your original body. And Al says yes, but he's also like, seems really dejected here. He's left alone in this train car in a way that feels it's so isolating, in a way that's really sad and pitiful. And I was just like, aw. And Ed pauses on the threshold as Pinnacle walks in. And he doesn't really answer Winry about wanting to see Al and whether or not he is going to go to the train station, which I thought was kind of weird. And I'm just curious, guys, am I supposed to know why he's avoiding going to see Al? Or is that like, it's not even avoiding. I don't really know. Just the fact that he hesitates at all. I don't feel like I remember there being a reason for that. And maybe I'm just not supposed to know the reason. But anyway, Pinnacle gets introduced to all of these dudes. It's really fun to see the different, because like Ed is still sitting at this point. So with him, it's hard to make a comparison, but Pinnacle is standing, and we've got like Winry, who's only a little bit taller than her. And then we've got like the two soldiers who are a little bit like they're average height. And then we've got Greed, and we've got the two like Chimera guys, and they are so humongous. There is quite a range of sizes here. And Winry goes up to Ling and says, "Hey, you remember me?" And Greed is like, "Oh, right, I guess you know this guy." And apparently she hasn't been explained, like, who he is. So he tells her that he's Greed, and she just says, "Huh?" And later on, he says something about how she is his kind of girl because of a speech that she gives to Ed. But I really was sort of expecting him to hit on her a little bit more, and I'm not sure if that's like actually coming or if he's holding back because he's got just enough of Ling left in him to know that this is not a good idea. But because him saying that's my kind of girl, it didn't even really feel like a leering sort of thing. It felt much more like just applauding her attitude overall, you know? But yeah, he is explaining that we're here because Ed's automail is in need of serious maintenance, and we had to get him into condition before we head into the promised day or whatever it's called. And again, is the reason that his automail needed help because of the fact that he has grown. I am just putting it out there. So, yeah, Pinnacle tells Winry, "Give him a look-see after dinner. It's your workmanship, and I'm really not comfortable tinkering with it." So, we go then to the scene where she's talking to Ed about whether or not she is going to take off with Pinnacle while they deal with this threat. And this was one of those things that I have really mixed feelings on. Because basically they get in an argument over the fact that he is unwilling to promise he's going to be able to get everybody out of this. So he's explaining to her that they need to go because he's going to do his best, but he can't be sure it will work. And she basically yells at him and says, "I don't want to hear any doubts from you. You need to figure out a way to save everybody. And you need to tell me you're going to do it." This is, you know, like, I understand wanting that reassurance, but I don't understand what kind. This is the thing. This is not how I work personally. So it's really hard for me to imagine a situation in which I berate somebody into telling me that they're going to get something figured out, that there is no guarantee they will. They have only said it because I insisted they say it. That is not making me feel better, and that's not making them sound more certain of their own abilities, and it's not making any of this feel like it's under their control. It just feels like a hollow, false promise that I forced out of them. Because it is. And the fact that she is saying that they won't leave and that Ed has to promise he's going to succeed so that they don't get hurt, that feels kind of cruel. Like, I don't know, it just feels really selfish, and he's the one, like, putting it all on the line, and she's basically telling him, like, it's not good enough. And I am really not sure what fucking more she wants from him. Because when he says, like, it may not work, she basically replies with, like, so you're just going to let it happen. Which is not what he fucking said. He said he's going to try his best and he doesn't know if he can beat these people. And she should take precautions. Like, this is the sort of thing where you have to figure out a balance between having faith and being foolish. And it's like that old story about the guy who was waiting on his roof during a flood for God to rescue him. And all of these like different people come and offer him a boat ride, a helicopter ride, and he rejects them all because he says, God will rescue me. And then in the end, God is like, I sent a lot of people to help you, dude, and you didn't take any of their help. It feels like that to me, you know, like he is trying to get her out of there and warn her because he knows what could potentially happen here. And that is the help he's giving. So to reject that as if it in and of itself is an admission of either I'm not going to like try that hard, or, well, you know, if everybody dies, at least you won't be dead. As if he's sort of shrugging his shoulders and acting like it's not a big deal. I don't really get her attitude here. It just feels like putting an unnecessary pressure on an already incredibly high pressure situation. And it doesn't serve her in any way. So it just didn't like it. At least later on, when greed shows up and is like, oh, she's my kind of girl, she wants it all. I felt like that was sort of acknowledging how unreasonable she's being. And maybe that is what we are supposed to be taking away from this, is that she is kind of like wanting something that's not possible. But there is a sense a lot of the time in shows like in shows that are sometimes really idealistic, that having any doubt is going to be what throws the whole plan off. That you have to be 100% fully committed and believe in yourself 100% in order to be able to succeed. And I feel like that's a really toxic sort of mindset, you know? Nothing, like, if you believe in yourself 100%, you aren't going to be happy with the results of your life. Because nothing ever happens at 100%. And that's not even necessarily a bad thing. There are so many things in my life that I wanted desperately at one time or another. And I look back and I think, if I had gotten the thing I allegedly wanted, I'd really have been screwed. Like, that wouldn't have gone the way I imagined at all. But sometimes it still works out. But, you know, it's just like, this is a similar thing to in One Piece, how every storyline revolves around somebody had a dream and they never give up their dream. And sometimes it just feels like you maybe should just give your dream up, though, because it's like people are dying. It's fine, you know. But anyway, so yeah, this conversation between the two of them, it just didn't go the way I was expecting, because I sort of thought, due to the fact that she like finds Ed in her room, that he's already at the house before she even gets there. It's really like dark too, in a way that I thought meant Pinako had left, but she turns out to be here. So, I had expected that they might have a bit more of a like heart to heart about caring about each other. Not even necessarily a huge declaration of love or anything like that, but just that they would dance around a bit how they have growing feelings for one another. And instead she just kind of berates him for the fact that his attempts to like save the entire continent are not good enough. Do whatever it takes to make it happen. And I was kind of like, I mean, I don't feel like you're thinking through what that really means when you say it, but okay. And this is the moment where I noticed that Ed is like taller than her by like a good amount too. It's not like they're almost the same height now or anything. He is significantly taller. So I also thought she was going to mention that she would be super distracted in the midst of the scene by what she is saying to him because it's very important to her and this is a high stress, high stakes situation. And then all of a sudden she would stop and be like, "Are you taller?" But it never comes up. It's like she never noticed, which I thought was really weird. And that's part of what made me sort of second guess myself because, you know, we had that moment several episodes ago where Ed's walking away and she like looks at him and thinks to herself, were his shoulders always so broad? And it's clearly supposed to be kind of a moment of like her seeing him in a certain way for the first time. Well, he's literally grown a foot and you don't seem aware of it, which I find strange. But anyway, so yeah, he goes out into the hall and Greed basically says to him, people keep thinking greed is just about wanting money or wanting power, and that's an inherently bad thing. But it's not. Everybody wants something that they don't have. And this is something that one could say about all of them, right? Like all of the 7 deadly sins are really not a horrible thing in and of themselves. It's just out of proportion. They're dangerous. But yeah, so I was on board for this speech overall. But Ed says something like, "This is what happened to me the last time that I had unrealistic expectations," and he shows him his arm. And we jump to them saying goodbye. And Winry is like, "You're leaving in the middle of the night?" And Ed's like, "Yeah, well, we were supposed to leave this afternoon. But when you showed up, we decided to push it off a little bit." And he says, "It was good to see you, and thanks for the tune-up." And Pinnacle says, "If you happen to run into Hohenheim, make sure to give him that message from your mother." And he says, "Just lay low until the promised day passes." And Winry doesn't respond to anything on this. He says, it'll be done. We'll take care of it. I promise. Have an apple pie waiting for us. But he doesn't say, he doesn't tell them to leave. He just says, lay low. And Winry doesn't really protest. So I don't really know what lay low even means. Because, you can be in your home, and I don't think it's going to necessarily matter. Getting them out of here is really the only option that's going to do anything. But I don't know. So yeah, when she tells him to make an apple pie, she smiles and nods at him. And then we cut to Lior. I love this, guys. Our guys are coming back from helping rebuild, and Yoki is in front walking in this weird way, which I think is meant to imply that he's really, really sore. Y'all, I have started to get back into my weightlifting finally, and I am really dreading the days where this happens, because there is nothing quite like soreness to make you just suddenly so aware of how little you use certain areas on your body. It is really wild. Poor Yoki, because he is not a guy who does a lot of physical labor. The other two, the Chimera guys, they're all saying, wow, that was a lot of work. And those are giant, jacked military men, and they are tired. So Yoki, he wasn't going to stand a chance. And they're talking about what they should be doing because Promise Day is coming. And one of them says we really should be getting ready. And the other says, well, what are we supposed to do? We're still waiting on Marco and Scar to show up. What the hell are they doing? What's taking them so long? And then they all of a sudden walk by Marco and Scar at the counter. And they're both just eating some bagels and drinking some coffee. And they're like, what the fuck are you guys doing? And we find out they have been collecting allies. So, guys, this is one of those moments that drives me fucking crazy. When they ask what took you so long, where were you? Marco gets up and says, there's no time. We need to get back to Central. There's no time for what? Just talk while you walk. It's fine. This is like right up there for me with characters not sharing information with one another that they should, just because they each have misunderstood something in a weird way, is the like, there was no time to explain. And I will tell you what, it is extremely rare that that's in the script and it's actually true. Most of the time, it's written as if there was never a moment when we saw them riding in a car together for literal hours going to like another location. But it's just said, oh, well, I just didn't have a chance to explain. You had 1,000 chances to explain. I know you did because I saw the duration of time that was implied. And there is just like this one moment, it just felt like such a perfect example. They're literally just sitting and chilling, eating bagels and drinking coffee, seeming to be quite relaxed. And then all of a sudden there's no time. Okay, even if you did just have to get up and leave immediately, Scar, by the way, is still continuing to sit there as Marco gets up. Scar doesn't seem to be in nearly as much of a rush. But you guys are on the road, and the whole reason for it, of course, is because we're supposed to be getting the surprise of all of these allies from Ishval that we didn't know were coming. So it's supposed to be, a setup for that. And I understand that in terms of it being a surprise to the audience, but there's a way to like have them telling these guys and basically, we'll tell you on the way. And then we get to them and they're a surprise for the audience still, even though the characters and the scenes still know what's going on. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just like, it's such a small thing, but it drives me fucking crazy. And it's because I am an over communicator. And so when I watch things where people don't communicate at all, I feel like, and it doesn't even matter here because they find out shortly after and nothing went wrong because they didn't have the information. It's simply the implication of saying there's no time when there definitely is. Let's see. B. Morris says lay low equals stay here, which is him acquiescing to her demand, right? And asking for an apple pie for us means Al and I meaning bodies back. So that was him making both the promises she demanded. Well, that sucks. Don't make those promises. That was like kind of the way I took it, but I didn't want to because I think making those promises is a stupid thing to do. And I don't think that it's like cute. And I don't think that it's like at all reasonable of her to demand it. And I think it's kind of like, I feel like it's really lacking in compassion of her, to be honest. It's being played as if she's really the strong one and it's like, that's all very easy for you to say when you're sitting at home making tea while they're out there fighting fucking homunculi. I'm not buying it. No. I just, So, anyway, so they have all of these allies. One of them is the former master that was like teaching Scar way back in the day, who basically told him, you need to knock it off with this, like, all of these assassinations because they're not helping anything and you're just continuing this awful cycle of violence. And they're talking about, like, it's surprising that you're here trying to save our country. And he says, I'm not trying to save it. I'm trying to change it. I want them to acknowledge what they did to my people, and I want to make it so that it's incapable of ever doing so again. And the master shows up and says, if you want to change the world, you must be able to change yourself. The ebb and flow is a simple rule of life. This dude's voice sounds really similar to Pagaya from the Cloud City in One Piece. I think it's the same voice actor. I think I said that before. But yeah, that's when he said, Marco says, so you want to know what took us so long? See, this is the thing we've been at for months. And I'm like, you could have. Okay, it's fine. So we go to the drills that the Amestris army are performing. And we've got, his name is Grumman, right? The creep who grabbed that woman's ass. And he is saying, I'm glad they're holding drills on my turf for a change. It's too cold up north for my men to have a fair fight. And he's talking to Miles as they walk amongst it. And he says, everything is set and ready to go. And Miles says, it's set on our end as well. And Grumman says, they have placed a stumbling block in our path, though. And he gestures up, and it turns out that the Führer is here. He has come to observe all of this because he has already been apparently aware that there is some hinkiness going on. And Miles is just like, God damn it, I did not think that this dude was going to come himself. I knew that they were going to be watching us, but I didn't think it was going to be like this. And Grumman has this little fan, and he pulls it out and just fans himself and just says, well, we'll just have to do something about it. And there was something about him saying that while he fanned himself that was so funny to me. I don't know if that's meant to be kind of a reference to the fact that he was like cross-dressing in another episode or what, but it was very fun. Just the idea of this general with his little fan. So we cut to Al here, and he is alone in that train car. He has just been sitting chilling completely by himself. I felt so bad for him. This whole scene, it's just such a series of like him being like nobody being around to help him. And has this like moment where he sees his body in the void, and he says this keeps happening and it keeps lasting longer and longer. This bond isn't going to hold up for much longer. We've got to do something. And as he's in the midst of panicking about that, there's a noise. And he gets up and goes out of the train car. I really didn't want him to do this. I felt so strongly about it. If you are hiding and you hear a sound and you're not supposed to be there, you don't come out to investigate it. You stay where the fuck you are, because you have to assume that the noise has nothing to do with you or your presence. And I understand that maybe he would be backed into a bit of a corner here, but he gets got anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, so he walks out, and there's like this splattering, and it's meant to be Gluttony's drool, I guess. And he says, I smell him. It's the little boy in armor. And he says, you want me to chase you? And he starts running after Al as Al is fleeing the scene, saying, I can't fight him now, not in this condition. Which I'm assuming is, just the fact that he keeps getting like sort of, the void keeps grabbing him. And he's trying to run, and all of a sudden something grabs at his foot, and he looks down, and it's the shadows. I'll tell you what, guys, because, the name of this episode is Creeping Shadows. So, of course, the minute I hear that, I'm like, okay, so Pride is going to be featuring here. And I had forgotten that Al doesn't know about Salim, and he doesn't know, I don't think he's ever met Pride. So this is like wrapping him up in like the shadow hands and whatnot. And poor Al is just laying there going, what is this? What's happening? And there is something so awful about this attack when I stop and think about the fact that Al doesn't realize what's going on. Like, it's bad enough to be attacked when you're fully aware of who your fucking enemy is. But to be clueless and shit's just occurring and you don't have any control over it and you don't have any, like, context. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but shadows aren't something that I associate with the idea, the concept of pride. So if I were, I don't know what I would think. Like, if I were going to come up with something that I wanted to be sort of linked to pride conceptually, I feel like it would be something to do with, like, things that feed the ego, mirrors or photos or like something to do with the image that you, like, leave on the world or present to the world. But the shadows thing is surprising. And that's sort of like something that I have noticed is that the relevance of the weapons that each of the sins, for lack of a better way of collectively talking about them, the homunculi, that they each have are not really necessarily thematic, but I wonder if there is actually, like, a rhyme and reason to them that I haven't sussed out yet, or maybe that hasn't been revealed yet. I don't know, but it was just interesting to me to think about, like, things that cast a shadow and what link that has to pride. Like, envy, being made of a lot of different people, feels in a way relevant because it's like trying to imitate everyone else, being very constantly aware of what the people around you are like and what they have, what you don't have. That felt like it made sense. And of course, gluttony just straight up eats people. So that's very much like, it's just a very one-to-one. But then lust has the knives. Greed has the armor, which I don't really... That one I don't feel like I see a connection either. I don't know. But I was just wondering about it. So yeah, pride has him wrapped up, and basically, like, as he's getting taken down by pride, Al is like having another moment of getting drawn into the void and is just saying to himself, no, 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 not now, not now. And pride says, you rest up. Just take it nice and easy for a while. We'll wake you on the promised day. And the little hands come right up next to the blood sigil, which I did not care for at all, because I don't like being reminded how easy it is to kill Al. And, like, to be honest, it's not any easier to kill him than it is to kill anybody. You open somebody's throat and there it is. But there is something about the blood sigil and how, like, you could really do it by accident so easily. That makes me very, very nervous. So then we go to Armstrong. She is standing at the window and Roy comes in and says, mind if I intrude? So he tells her, first of all, I'm going to be taking you out to dinner soon, so just to warn you. I can't tell how serious he is about this. You know, like, I really can't. Like, a lot of it feels like he's joking around and just sort of trying to annoy her. But because he likes Hawkeye, so I thought. I feel like he's just fucking with her, and I think she knows that. I don't know. And he says something about her mansion being enormous. If you wanted to, you can hide an entire battalion in there. And he says it in such a way that she sort of gives him a look. And it feels like that was a very meaningful thing that he was saying. You seem to be rather enamored with it, Colonel. I'll leave it to you if something happens to me. And he says, really? You won't leave it to your brother? And she says, if it's a choice between the two of you, I'd rather it go to you. don't take that as a compliment, which I really, she's great. So he gives her these hyacinths and tells her it's congratulations for taking over the Armstrong family. And there's a note in it that says Selim Bradley is a homunculus. And then he tells her that the hyacinths symbolize feminine virtues, which is the perfect bit to give her an excuse for burning the flowers. Ladylike charm. Sorry, not feminine virtues. Ladylike charm. And so that way, yeah, she can burn the evidence, and it just looks like a rage result of his presumption. But it honestly does seem like a really well thought out little plan here. And the guys who are like burning leaves in the yard feel really well placed. And a part of me was like, did he set up those guys to be standing there for when he gave her this? Like, I don't know how much of this is already put in place, you know? So we go back to the I don't know what to call this, like, field, this tactical practice field. What do you call this? But Grumman is like, he says, I feel so helpless. Why don't we just accidentally blow up the tower that Bradley is in? And I really enjoyed that because it sounds like he's just saying this off the top of his head, but then he like kind of does do something like that. So this soldier comes over and talks to Bradley and is telling him, we haven't been able to find Alphonse. We've searched the entire area. Hopefully they didn't get to him. And then this other dude is coming up to Bradley and letting him know about a situation that they have uncovered. And Bradley thought that he was on top of things. And it turns out like not quite so much as he thought. So this general, Hakuro, he says, I've come to give you a warning. General Grumman plans to, and Bradley interrupts, to use the Eastern forces to stage a coup? Yes, I know, I've anticipated it. And this guy is like, no. He actually was, there's a whole other thing going on. The threat is just a decoy, a distraction. Their plan was to draw the bulk of the military's divisions and attention away from Central. Ishvalan terrorists are gathering to attack the city. Afterwards, General Grumman will invade Central under the pretense of stopping the terrorists. And the general then plans to ally with Colonel Mustang amid the chaos in order to take the place of Central Command. And so this basically ensures that the Fuhrer wants to turn around and head right back to Central. According to intelligence, a large number of Ishvalans have been seen gathering in the slums outside of Central. So we have evidence to support General Hakuro's intelligence. I love it because Bradley is like looking down at Grumman, who is just chilling with his fan and just sort of like looking up at him in a way that feels like, what are you going to do about it, bucko? So he says, prepare the train, we'll head back to Central. And they're all on the train car talking about how they should have known that they needed to take down Mustang completely, that he's treacherous, that, you know, it was obvious that he was going to make trouble and they should have just fucking removed him from the board. And then all of a sudden the train comes to a stop on this bridge. Really, really high bridge, by the way. And it appears for a moment that they have come to a pause because there's sheep crossing the tracks. And then all of a sudden, the train car comes detached from the engine, which drives away. And the guys are leaning out the window so they notice it. And they go, it just left. And then you see somebody's hand depress a plunger. and the fucking whole train car explodes, and there is just a hole in the track, which to me felt a little bit short-sighted. Like, you have just sort of destroyed the ingress and egress point that is, it feels like you might be shooting yourself in the foot. Maybe it's a tactical advantage. I don't know. But I just felt like this seems like something that could come and bite you in the ass. And this is treated as if it's the definitive death of Wrath. I don't know if that's... I don't think it... Like, I'm just imagining Lust and how she was killed. And how many times Roy had to, like, completely flamethrow her before it finally killed her. And I just don't feel like this seems like quite enough. The only thing that could maybe be like the backup is that it was such a height. They were hundreds of feet above this like canyon floor. And maybe the explosion and then the drop would do it. But as they're all sort of wondering, why did the engine leave us behind? The camera cuts to the Fuhrer, who is sitting there with this expression on his face that seems very knowing. Like, he just seems to be aware that that something is up, that there's about to be an attack. In a way that makes me wonder, did he manage to like jump out of there just before this went off because he sensed what was happening? Or was it just supposed to be him realizing just before he died? I don't know how seriously to take deaths of the homunculi. That's just been my consistent problem. You know, we saw like this whole thing with Gluttony, who is back in full form now, and I'm expecting to see Envy back as well, because apparently May is just going to do some dumb shit. So yeah, I understand they're assuming that he's dead, but I really don't feel like I would be that. There's no body. There's no nothing. I just can't buy it, you know? So, yeah, he says we've safely cleared the sheep off the tracks. Over. And then we cut to the aides. You've been played for a fool, General. They set us up. They attacked the Fuhrer's train, and they blew it up over a ravine. And I love this. They're all just like, oh, no. And then in the background, Grumman with his fan is just going, like, it's a giggle. It's almost a cackle. Look, he pissed me off with grabbing that chick's butt, and I stand by it, but also that was very funny. He is so delighted with himself. So then we go to Hawkeye, and she is getting her shit together, her little faithful pooch, and she has the boys with her, and she's like, all right, guys, let's fucking do this. I'm glad you have my back. And they're like, well, we are deserters now, but we know what the right thing to do is. And Fury is like, our careers, and she says something like, well, if we make it through this, I have a feeling our careers are going to be just fine. And I was like, yeah, I feel like he's thinking very short term here. So we cut to Roy, and he is just like staring out the window in this pensive fashion. We get the end credits, and then there is a post-credit scene. And we have everybody in the like briefing room finding out that the Fuhrer is dead, and Armstrong is like disgusted with all of their attitudes, because everybody is just, he can't be dead. This has got to be a mistake. We're still waiting on confirmation. Have they even started searching yet? And she is just like, God damn, they're like chickens with their heads cut off. This is fucking pathetic. And then she thinks to herself, this is actually the best chance I might get. And as she is thinking that, all of a sudden, she hears this sound and looks up. And Father is standing right behind her, looking over her shoulder. And he's got Sloth with him. And he just, it was just a weird moment where I was like unsure. I've been unsure to a point how much everybody knows about all of the other homunculi and what all is happening. They all seem completely unsurprised by his presence. I also want to register the fact that he comes up to basically like the top of Sloth's waist. I don't feel like I ever realized how big Sloth is supposed to be, unless he can change sizes, and that's part of what's happening here. But Sloth looks like he is roughly like the size of a house. Genuinely like a house. Fairly small, obviously, like we would say maybe a one-bedroom Cape Cod. But nevertheless, I knew he was big, but this felt like a lot bigger than I was even thinking. But yeah, he tells them all, calm down, stop panicking. And he puts a hand on Armstrong's shoulder and says, I'm still here with you, and I'm watching over Central. And the way that he says, I'm still here with you, felt like he knew what Armstrong was thinking of doing and was specifically telling her to back off. I don't know how completely pointed it was and how much it was a coincidence, but yeah, it really definitely came across to me as just like, don't do it, bitch. I'm right here. Don't. So I don't know. But let's see. They're talking about hyacinths in the chat. B. Moore says, that's from Greek/Roman mythology. Japanese culture has its own meaning tied to different flowers, so I have no idea if the hyacinths thing is specifically accurate. Yeah, I find it really interesting how certain meanings are assigned to certain things in different cultures, and we really will take things as, in a certain way, and it'll be a complete opposite interpretation if you come from somewhere else. And I think that the people who believe in that sort of stuff, like my mom, would be like, it's going to manifest to you in language that you understand. So whether or not it means the same thing to somebody from Japan is meaningless, because you are not from Japan. It is coming to you and therefore means the thing that you know. And I feel like that's as good an explanation as any, I guess. If you're going to believe in it, may as well just like believe that the whole thing is, already figured out for you and managed in that way. But so this is that's the end of the episode. And the fact that Father has just straight up come out and been like, I'm here, I mean, that's probably the strongest case for Wrath actually being gone. I don't know if it matters or not, because I don't really understand what our goal is overall. The loss of homunculi along the way may not wind up being a problem. It just depends on if and the fact that Father has come out and is like, I'm here. Okay, you're here. And all of these guys who, one of them says something about how it's an honor to have you here. I'm assuming that more of them know who he is than don't. But the public don't know who he is. So do you just keep pretending that the Führer is alive for the sake of the public and just sort of keep that appearance up? Or is this the moment where Father sort of is like, hey, everybody, your Führer is dead, but it doesn't matter because he was just a piece of me. And shows his whole hand, or what? I really don't know. I don't know how they're going to handle this. So, yeah, I'm interested to see. And the whole thing where he says to, like, Armstrong, you could hide a whole battalion in here. I'm just like, could she indeed? And would she be doing that anytime soon? Perhaps. I mean, and the fact that she says, I leave it to you, feels very much like she's saying, I hear what you're saying. Sounds like you could use the place. So, I'll tell you what, anything happens to me, I'll make sure that you can hide a battalion here if you need to. You know, that's what that sounded like. As far as Al, though, genuinely very concerned about Al. I don't like it. He's all alone. That's the thing I think that really cut me up, is watching him be so isolated from everybody else in a way that feels like Ed could take it more than Al can. Al just seems a lot more social, and he's such a sweetie. And I feel like Ed being alone would just be easier for him to be by himself than it is for Al. That said, Ed being alone also can sometimes be a recipe for Ed doing, like, really impulsive shit. But he seems to be growing, literally and figuratively, so I don't know. But I just hope that... I really... Like, what it comes down to is, do I think Al is going to get his body back? Because you could go several ways. One, you could just make this a tragedy and have both him and Ed die. They save everybody, but they don't actually survive. I don't see that happening. Then you could have they survive, but they realize they aren't ever going to get their bodies back, but they manage to save everybody, and they decide to make the best of it and realize that, you know, life is about more than this stuff. But because they've set up the fact that Al's soul is, the, like, bond is being sort of broken slowly over time, I don't feel like that's it either. So I think they are going to get their bodies back in the end. And frankly, I'm glad. Because, like, I'm all about an ambiguous ending. You guys know that. But sometimes you just want to fucking win. You know? You just want a straight up victory. So I hope they do. I hope they get their bodies back. And I'm going to even throw in there, I hope their mom comes back to life. I don't think that's happening. But that would be pretty good if we could just throw that in there. And maybe... what's her face is Izumi? What is her teacher's name? That she, like, maybe her baby comes back to life. You know, any number of things. So just throw them all out there and just be like, sure, and that. Why not? I don't know what that means for their dad, if he would be affected by any of this stuff. But yeah, I don't know. So that's where I stand. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me. Hope you're enjoying the coverage. Thank you again to Max for commissioning this. And until next week, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.